morning, this lovely Saturday morning, and welcome to the 44th episode of the News Report. I'm SALIFYANJI, BWEUPE.
And I'm KAMOTA, MAYONDI.
If you're watching us right now, thank you for catching us, and you're watching us on your Top Star channel 112, on your Top Star decoders, as well as our Facebook live feed that is Live TV, as well as our YouTube channel that is a Live TV channel as well. For any comments, contributions, and suggestions, and obviously your feedback, you can send us those messages to 0976 599 547 as well. So we get into the leading stories for this morning. COVID-19 deaths reach 108. UNZA assembles team to find COVID-19 cure. Local investors key, says Yaluma.
Mazabuka youth who stabbed man over girlfriend sentenced to 30 months imprisonment. UK, US, Canada accuse Russia of hacking virus vaccine trails.
So we get right into the details of today's episode. Minister of Health Dr. Chitalo Chilufya has told Parliament that COVID-19 deaths in Zambia has risen to 108 with 22 patients on oxygen. In a ministerial statement, Dr. Chilufya also indicated that the country has recorded 190 new cases out of 848 tests conducted. Cumulatively, the cases stand at 2,620 with 1,434 recoveries as well as 108 deaths. Active cases stand at 1,078 with 22 cases on oxygen. So a total number of 67,096 tests were done. So reclassification of deaths is 108, 22 COVID-19 deaths, 63 COVID-19 associated deaths, 23 pending clarification, and 84 out of 108 community deaths were BID. Meanwhile, Speaker of the National Assembly, Dr. Patrick Matibini, Friday morning urged Health Minister Chitalo Chilufya to respond to concerns raised by Mazabuka Central Member of Parliament, Gary Nkombo, with maturity. During Friday's Parliament session that was monitored by Live TV, Dr. Matibini noted with concern that Dr. Chilufya's responses were confrontational and lacked the spirit of national building in the fight against COVID-19 in the country. He threatened to curtail the session if the Minister of Health proceeded in the manner he was responding on matters of national concern. This was after Nkombo wanted to find out why the PF government was administering the COVID-19 measures discriminatory. Nkombo noted with sadness that PF party officials, ministers, and MPs were allowed to gather and mobilize, while other political players were not allowed to carry out such activities on pretext of COVID-19. Before we dissect and dive into this story, we'll take a look at this.
And I want you to know, as I ask my question, that we from UPND, and I'm chairman elections, have been forbidden by the Ministry of Home Affairs to conduct our intra-party elections, which fall within the realm of the constitutional provisions, citing COVID-19. And as you appeal to us that we should not make this political, I want you to take note of those. And finally, you yourself, Minister, as you appear before the court of law, answering your own charges, have been seen with cadres who are not observing social distances. I want you to answer me now. Why shouldn't you think we feel discriminated with the evidence that I've given you now? When we want to have intra-party elections, our members are being arrested every single day to a point where we even have our intra-party elections in the bush to run away from the police.
Mr. Speaker, as Minister of Health, I am concerned about the health of all individuals, including the Honourable Member of Parliament. That bitterness he needs to tone down because it will claim his.
Honourable, take your seat. Take a seat. Take a seat.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your guidance. And Mr. Speaker, let COVID-19 not be used as a reason for people to suddenly become democratic. The UPND has never held elections for many years. So, Mr. Speaker,
Honourable Minister of Health, take a seat. Take a seat. Honorable Minister of Health, I'm sure we can proceed otherwise. We can proceed otherwise. I have no doubt that you're able to. The issues under discussion are professional issues. The health issues. There's a point this has been made about discrimination. So they would like you to clarify on the enforcement of these measures which you put in place. And I think for progress' sake, let's confine ourselves to the issues. I know we're in a politically charged atmosphere. If we won't be able to proceed in a manner I'm indicating, then I'll just stop this session altogether.
So that is some news coming out of Parliament there, and we saw the Central Member of Parliament, that is Gary Nkombo, and the Health Minister, Dr. Chilufya, having, their own opinions, over issues to do with COVID-19. We'll base it around that because everything is based around that. And I do understand where Gary Nkombo is coming from, where he feels people are being discriminated, like the other parties are being discriminated because they cannot freely hold, any gatherings. But you see, or we saw the case of the health minister when he was appearing before the courts of law, that he had a huge, number of supporters that were there with him. And obviously the regulations and the guidelines for COVID-19 were not being followed at that particular point. And yes, I do understand where he's coming from. I do feel like this is not the time to politicize, COVID-19. It's more serious than ever.
Right.
And to every one of those people that were thinking, no, it's probably a myth or it's not really happening, it's really come closer to us now, and we're feeling the impact because it's people. It's people that are close to us that are losing their loved ones through or by this virus that has come on. Yeah.
So I feel leadership should be the ones who are showing us how best to go about it. So it's very, very saddening when you have the entire Minister of Health being seen to be, well, of course he cannot control the people around him, but it reflects badly on the work that they're doing. On one hand, you're telling people maintain physical distance, maintain social distancing, wear masks, and then he had an opportunity there within the chambers of parliament to say that happened and this is unfortunate,
and we'll control it and
yes,
it won't happen again.
And also, as the speaker said, address the issue. Is it fair, or does it seem just to you that your colleagues are able to meet while others are not? So it's very, very important that well, I guess that's why you have a speaker, to bring conversations in and to hold people accountable and to keep them in line. So I think that was Honorable Nkombo also just spoke, MP Gary Nkombo, he spoke very... He wasn't upset, like initially.
He wasn't attacking.
Yes, he
either.
wasn't attacking either.
Yeah.
He was very calm and just stating like this is what it is and how can we proceed from here.
Sure.
And Dr. Chilufya got a bit emotional or a bit angry and
Sure thing. And also now when it comes to the rise in cases also, I think this is something that we cannot really overemphasize on how we need to take care of ourselves, how we need to social distance, how we need to put on masks. I've seen, the mayor going around and still closing down places that, are breaking
the
guidelines that have been given out there. And I feel like he's really, really doing a good job, But then again, I think the onus is upon everyone to actually take up responsibility and just say, you know what, we can't keep on spreading this disease. And like I said last time, I feel like those people that are in isolation are the ones that are actually going out and spreading this virus around because they're not staying home as they should.
Well, there's definitely a very, very alarming way we are conducting ourselves, and it's colder, and from the information that we have, it appears that it will only get colder. And when it's colder, you may be compromised with regard to, are you keeping yourself warm enough, and your chest and that type of thing. And then in the event that, say, you got COVID-19 and you're already in a slightly bad shape, it's very worrying. We have 22 cases of people on oxygen,
oxygen.
and we've heard the stories about, do we have enough oxygen in the event that we then get our health services overwhelmed with people who now need oxygen.
Exactly.
So prevention is better than cure.
Sure.
It's unfortunate that as a country we're not at a level where there's a certain amount of healthcare available to all. And worst case scenario, you don't want to be in the worst case scenario as an individual. And I like that there was a classification there as you were sharing the details of the deaths. 108 deaths in total, and these were split out between COVID-19 deaths, associated deaths, as well as pending deaths. I'm not saying that because we have 63 COVID-associated deaths, we should relax, you know, but it also just helps to give context as well. Because we have, sometimes information is power, but with COVID-19, sometimes it also brings anxiety and fears. So it's very important to make sure that we are also understanding, like, died of COVID, died with COVID, with those type of things. And you also touched on a very important point to say proximity. We have more numbers, and naturally, as more numbers come out, you start to have 6 degrees of separation where you're like, oh, that's so-and-so's dad, that's so-and-so's child, and you kind of no longer just have statistics, but you have faces and names to it. But for me, I've change the way that I'm looking at it and the way that I'm thinking to say, it doesn't need to come close to home for you to feel the need to now mask up, because of every death, starting the time that we had recorded 1 death, 2 deaths, 3 deaths, these are people who are people's close relations. This is someone's spouse, someone's child. It doesn't have to come home to you before you say, oh, COVID is real. COVID is real, but it is getting realer because of proximity.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. And to prevent it from coming to you, you need to take those measures that have been put in place. And I do like, you know, what you touched on when it comes to the classification of the death and whatnot. It's very important to understand context in everything that you do, even if it's a story. Why is there any related story to this? How did it come about? Just dig deeper into the story and understand how it's coming. Like you said, it may look like it's 63, but you know, you don't know what lies in the shadows there, like what else, you know, you could bring about. And especially that we're now in this season where, like, I'm freezing right now, and it's so easy to actually get a cold, get a cough and whatnot, and complications. I don't know which surface I'm touching. I don't know what air I'm breathing and who, you know, was there at that particular time, because I may not know who that person is. So it's just best to really take care of yourself. You need to mask up. No matter how uncomfortable that is right now, people still need to do it. Wash your hands regularly, you know, as much as possible, and everything else.
Right. And before we get into to the next story, even the wearing of the masks, we see a lot of people just covering the mouth and not the nose. So there's also wrong, because I remember when COVID just came, we had people on TV literally showing us how to wear the mask, how to loop it. So it's also important, not wearing a mask, but wearing your mask correctly. Because there's no point if you're wearing your mask and you've only covered your mouth, but your nose is still in the open. So it's also important to make sure that you're wearing your mask correctly.
And I remember I had, sorry, before getting into the next story, I had a conversation with a colleague, and they was asking me, say, Sally, when was the last time you washed your mask? So we're having a conversation, eh? And I was like, I have probably like 2 or 3 of the material, you know, masks and whatnot. He's like, sometimes, you know, it's easy to forget to wash these things, because we take it literally, just say, okay, you just need to mask up. But how about washing it and making sure it's clean and there's hygiene that is being maintained?
There could be contamination.
Exactly,
and also being mindful of where we put our masks when we remove them. I've seen a lot of people place them on surfaces, and you want to make sure are you placing it on the side that goes to your mouth, or are you placing it on the other side? But ideally, you should have a little place where you keep your mask, so that you're not now again, it defies the purpose if you then now put your mask on a public counter in a shop. You're just exposing yourself to a whole myriad of bacteria, and you never know what's on the surface.
That's true.
Right. And so, in a COVID-19 related story, the University of Zambia is taking a lead in discovering homegrown low-cost cure for the COVID-19 pandemic. So, a team of experts, which includes a medical chemist, drug discovery ex-scientists, virologists, botanists, pharmacologists, and pathologists, are set to explore ways in which we can have a homegrown and low-cost cure. So this team will also be exploring Zambian traditional medicines and plants, as well as clinically established drugs in the Zambian formulary as potential treatments of COVID-19. So the UNZA Vice Chancellor Tamala Kambikambi says the team comprises of Dr. Nurenda, who will be the lead investigator, Dr. Peter Mubanga Cheoka, Dr. Edgar Simulundu, Dr. Angela Gonowalya, and Dr. Takondwa Chidumayo. Others are Dr. Katendi Changula, Dr. Caroline Chisenga, Dr. Wezi Kachinda, and Mr. Kelly Chisanga. So this particular consortium of experts has received funding from the Ministry of Higher Education through the National Science and Technology Council, which will be used to kickstart the project. Dr. Kambi says the team's core mandate is firstly to discover and develop medicines that are readily available for the local population, and to discover local medicines optimized for the effectiveness and safety on an African or local population. And so Dr. Kambi says the UNZA's researchers undertaking this will solve the problems exacerbated by the unavailability of medicines discovered and developed elsewhere on the African continent. So this is according to a statement that was issued to ZNBC by the University of Zambia's acting head of communication and marketing, Dr. Brenda Bukowa. I like that this particular research is happening in Zambia. I like that there is a good, the team is solid. We have virologists, botanists, pharmacologists, pathologists, and also from the names that we had read out, it's also mixed. There's men and there's women. So it's also good to see representation, to see women who are working towards this, to see men and women working together, and also traditional medicines being considered when they look at them from the lab to see what works, what doesn't work. Because sometimes we shun traditional medicines over Western medicine because it has, I just think we tend to just approach traditional medicine with some skepticism, but I think it's a matter of just refining our measurements. And when you have a great team such as this, you can expect that there would be some good forthcoming results, whether it's from traditional medicines or what would work that we have available locally.
Exactly. And when when you read out that the consortium of experts has received funding from the Ministry of Higher Education, I'm like, finally, this is something that I think now we need to really consider, and I'm glad that this team now has taken it upon themselves to try to look for probably a vaccine or a drug or any medications that will be able to stop or fight this particular pandemic and control it as well. I like to think sometimes using the term fighting is like it's too much, but control and obviously finding a cure would be the best route to take. Then I'm hoping that once this is done, if we find a cure, a vaccine, or some meds, there is going to be some accessibility also, like it will be accessible by every citizen, be it from a lower or middle class or higher class. Like it will be available for everyone as well. And it's a good thing that we are also standing up, and also with the rest of Africa, I'm sure every other country is doing what,
seeing what can we do with what we have.
So and I think Dr. Sodi also might have mentioned to say they have a team, that it's not only Zambia, but they have, consultation with other countries as well to just try to look for.
It's a global problem, so I'm sure there's a lot of exchanging of notes and best practices amongst researchers and scientists and doctors with regard to, okay, this is what we've found is working. Because it's like the way that we've seen as the COVID-19 pandemic has progressed. We've had different countries coming up to say, okay, we found that chloroquine is showing that if you give it, administer it to people with COVID-19, they may seem to pick up. So it's important that we have this work happening for us to find a homegrown solution to a problem that everyone in the world is facing, as well as Zambians. On that note, we take a break. You're watching the news report, and you'll catch us after this with more stories to come.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching News Report, and we're into our second segment of it. If you have any comments and contributions, please be sure to text us on the number that's on the screen. That's 0976-599-547, as well as you can send messages on our Facebook live feed, that is Live TV as well. So we go into our next story. Government says the economy will only record robust growth when indigenous entrepreneurs are empowered to scale up their businesses. Minister of Commerce Christopher Yaloma says this why government has come up with various interventions to upgrade the capacity of small medium enterprises, producers, organizations, and farmers. Mr. Yaloma says this in Lusaka when his ministry dispersed a 19 million kwacha grant to 35 small medium enterprises, producers, organizations, and farmers. And Minister of Information and Broadcasting Services Doris Elia urged Zambians to be proactive if they are to actualize their dreams in business. Ms. Celia said there are various sectors in Zambia yearning for local investment. At the same function, Zambia Agribusiness and Trade Project Manager Gordon Mackay said 41% of the beneficiaries of the grants being dispersed are women and youth. And Citizens Economic Empowerment Commission Director General Likando Mukumbuta said the commission is rolling out industrial yards of various manufacturing lines. Meanwhile, Zambia Development Agency Director Enterprise Development Mukula Makasa said the agency has since 2015 integrated 3,250 Zambian producers with the capacity to supply products to multinational chain stores as well. So this is some business news, and the Minister of Commerce was just giving an update, as to, why the government has come up with various interventions to upgrade or to empower the small to medium businesses as well. And this is a good move, especially now that we're going through this period of, obviously, the SMEs have had to suffer a little when it comes to paying off, some debts that they may have incurred, or enable them to actually make some profit through this pandemic that is there as well. Now, when it comes to this, him mentioning that, in fact, this is from the ZDA director, when he mentioned that they've had to empower or integrate 3,250 Zambian producers with capacity to supply products to multinational chain stores as well. I think this is a very good platform also for, local producers, farmers as well, to work hand in hand with, stores that is maybe chain stores like we have ShopRite, we have Pick and Pay, we have all these other supermarkets that we have around as well. And also, I'm made to think that they work closely, with markets as well, because it shouldn't just be limited to supplying of these supermarkets, but also the local people in that trade in, these local producers as well, because we can't ignore the fact that there is a marketeer, somewhere that is trying to also earn a living. So is that, produce accessible to them as well on an amount that they're able to afford and also fend for their family as well?
Right. Well, it's definitely a good move by the government to start to have a capacity building to move SMEs up the scale so that they can move from being in that particular tier and become actually big players in the market. And I think it's very important that these type of discussions are not just a feel-good factor. It's nice to actually see deliverables, to say, okay,
Exactly.
now this is what has happened. This is 2020, this started in 2015. So we've definitely seen growth, as the ZDA director had said, from 2015 to date, they've seen growth in capacity of Zambians to actually supply chain stores. So it's good to know that this isn't just talking feel-good factor. There's actually progress that has been made. And
Exactly, sure. And also the information minister urging Zambians to actually actualize their dreams and being proactive as well. I think that is also one area that people need to really be determined, in making it work, as opposed to depending on government. So if government is able to provide the capacity and the opportunity for a local producer to actually, create, businesses and make profits, I think that would be a good thing as well. And I don't know how many of these really actually happen, but in as much as, we want to hear from the ministry, from the government, I think they should also listen to the SMEs themselves and try to find out how, they can clear out those loopholes. Like, what are they actually looking for? Are they representing every business, owner in the country as well? Because one thing that would be noted, obviously, is people may only speak for themselves at that particular time.
Right.
But if they can be the voice and speak for every business owner in the country, I think that also, will allow for dialogue and many of these, initiatives to also come in place, and something to
and
help
the
us
19
progress.
million kwacha for 35 small medium enterprises, SMEs, producers in that particular bundle, that's quite a good amount of money.
Sure.
It's a very good amount of money, so it's definitely likely to go a long way. And not that I'm being a bit controversial, but I definitely feel when you look at 19 million against 35, as opposed to, is it 30 million for artists?
Yes, that we
don't
don't know the number.
right? So it helps when you have a defined group of people
when
to
it's
say,
organized.
this is who is going to benefit from it. And I'm also very much in support of the fact that 41% of the beneficiaries are women and youths. So it's also important to realize that women empowerment
There's
must
inclusion,
happen.
yeah.
And so we also look at empowerment of youths and women. So definitely some.
And I also think this is some information that needs to be, made available to those that need to access it. I can't say everyone, because it's not everyone that might be looking at
some
it
don't
this way.
qualify.
Exactly.
It's industry specific.
Sure thing. But now my concern would be based around like the interest rate. This is a grant, so it's the being loaned this money to actually, help fund businesses as well. So how much interest is it
Well,
that
the grant usually, in terms, it should be zero rated. It's like, it's free money, but it ideally should be with You have to meet
Unless they're
conditions.
paying back, yes,
you have to
exactly.
meet conditions. And if they say this, if for example, from the 19 million kwacha, you have been given 500,000 kwacha on the premise that these are the things that you have to do. So it's also, and that's why sometimes people don't really like grant money, because they feel that
There's so many conditions
it's free
attached to
money.
it,
It's
yeah.
like, in essence, free money. It's a grant. Will you do what you have set
Exactly.
out to
Because
do?
you need to give checks and balances at the end of the day.
Yeah, and sometimes there's that whole thing of, I know I don't need to pay it back, or if it's at a fairly low markup, if you're paying it back at all. There's a way that I feel, you know, when they say easy come, easy go,
Yeah.
you know, so sometimes there's
Free
that.
money
there's
always
that,
leaves your pockets first.
right,
Yeah.
and so there's that aspect of it. And it's also some of the reasons why initially, if you remember years back, the citizen economic empowerment, a lot of the money was not recovered, you know, so sometimes favorable terms of borrowing are disservice.
Do you think people give business plans but end up doing something else
All
with
the
the money?
time, all the
Because
time.
if the money was used as intended, you know, as initially planned on using according to the business plans, because obviously to qualify for this grant you need to have a proper business plan and give
Like-
every details of how you're going to run your business. But if you're going to not make anything or lose that amount of money, you know, quicker, you know, than how you go to receive it, then really, what
Well-
are you doing?
well,
And what do they do with those people that
who
actually
default,
yes.
or don't meet the target or the set out guidelines. And this is the challenge when it comes to grant or subsidized loans and that type of thing. Follow up and follow through. But generally, when it comes to business, whether you've got a loan at the standard interest rates set out by commercial banks, whether you have a grant, whether you have a subsidized facility to borrow, at the end of the day, it comes down to discipline, hey? Because we see people still act the same, whether it's a grant, whether it's a subsidized loan, whether it is a loan at a commercial rate, interest rate. It all comes down to business.
Exactly.
Like, do you know your numbers? Are your numbers correct? And are you disciplined enough to make sure you're meeting your repayment? Or if there's no repayment where it's a grant, are you meeting your objectives to say, okay, in 3 months' time, this is what you need if you're going to achieve the 9-month goal, right? So it also comes down to discipline, right?
Sure. And also, no man is an island. We need to learn to actually work with people that are actually good at doing certain things. There's nothing wrong with, you know, bringing in a freelance, you know, accountant to do all the numbers for you. I would have the idea, but I may not know how to actually, you know, take care of my money or be accountable when it comes to spending of that money or saving that money if I need to. So I think we also need to work with people that will be able to help us at least be more accountable, and also help us also learn certain things. If I have you to guide me, the next time probably I may do it halfway, and you only have to meet me the other halfway, you know, to actually make this happen, because I'm learning from the input that I'm also adding in, not just me, but obviously by the person that I decide to collaborate with in that particular business as well.
So sometimes it's the environment that we exist in is quite difficult for business. It can be extremely tough. So it's important to also empower people with knowledge
Exactly.
to say this is ideally what you should do. And on that note, we move to the next story where the 63 ministers and their deputies who remained in office after the parliament was dissolved in 2016 will pay back 75,851.81 kwacha each. So collectively, they will pay 4.7 million as suggested by the state. So the state says that the money will be recovered from Ngosa Simbiakula and 62 others for the period of May to July 2016. So the Attorney General, Likando Kalaluka, in November 2019 asked the Constitutional Court to direct the Registrar of the Constitutional Court to assess the amount of money that the Patriotic Front ministers are required to pay back as directed by the court. So this was after the court declined to reopen the judgment of August 8, 2016, in which it directed the ministers to pay back the allowances and salaries that they had acquired when they remained in office. So Constitutional Court Judge Enoch Mulembe, on behalf of others, maintained that the ministers pay back the money as no leave was sought in asking the court to review its decision. So the Accountant General at the Ministry of Finance stated that in a further affidavit in support of the assessment of the amounts due, the judgment dated August 8, 2016, that the emoluments have been computed for the period of May to July 2016. So Ms. Kalangwa said the computation showed that the total amount of recoverable from the former cabinet ministers and former deputy ministers for this period between May to July 2016 is in the sum of 4.7 million kwacha, and she stated that the amount was arrived at after looking at the pay slips of former cabinet ministers and former deputy ministers. This particular case was quite hot when it happened in 2016, and there was back and forth, and people were like, we were not illegally in office. It's others. And I remember the Law Association of Zambia was very vocal on this particular case at the time. I think it was under Linda Kasonde. I think she was the president of LAS at the time. I just need to verify that. But it's good to see that we've come to a conclusion on the matter, to say that 4.7 is the total amount, and it comes to about 78,000, 79,000 kwacha each per minister and their deputy. The thing that worries me, though, and it's taken a long time to get to that point, some ministers may no longer be serving anymore, and my biggest concern is recovering the money. Unfortunately, we know how it is when it comes to the way that jobs are, especially when it comes to the public civil servants. You find that if, for example, you were in a ministerial office, you're no longer there, and now you're told to recover 78,000, 75,000. It may be difficult for those who are not currently still earning, so that's my main concern. Is it going
you're being lenient right now? Because the fact of the matter is, they did get that money.
Yes.
So regardless of whether they're in office or not in office,
right?
Well,
So there's also that type of thing where when you're now no longer in power, you don't have income anymore. So it may be difficult for some of them to put together the 75,000, right?
75,000, yes.
75,851 kwacha. It may be difficult, but at the end of the day, this money belongs to the Zambian people, and it needs to be paid back. So it would be interesting to know whether it will be expected in lump sum or people will be given payment plans. So that would be interesting to know.
Okay, now on this particular matter, I don't know why you've been a bit lenient today, but anyway, I do understand that it could be a bit difficult to actually recover those monies from the ministers that, may have defaulted at that particular time. But here's the thing with the law. Like, you still, regardless of how long it takes, whether it's 10, 15, 20 years, it will still come back to haunt you. And this is what is happening right now. I do understand probably at that time, the Constitutional Court did not really have an amount that they came up with when this case started, and so it was so hard to actually even know where they stood. I don't know if the ministers by then were sweating at that particular time and saving a bit here, or they thought everything would just go away.
From memory, I feel like there was a lot of audacity around this. Yes. People who were being told they needed to pay money.
And this is what I think. I was about to say it feels like the law itself was disregarded and it was just thrown away. But this is a court that is ordering you to, do this, and you decide to go away. And the thing is, what could have been done at this particular time is probably if one of them came back into power, for those that came back, and were still ministers, it's okay to forgo or say, okay, don't pay me. I would rather you pay back.
Whilst you're in office.
Exactly, whilst you're in office, because you still have that money coming in, as opposed to having to wait, not knowing what your fate is going to be at the end of the day. So from 2016 till date, that's like a lot of time that has, has gone past. And I want to know also, First of all, I do understand probably it's taken long because there was not, the law was disregarded or the order was disregarded, and also probably because maybe the law in itself also took time to actually come back to this matter as well. And also, I want to find out, are there going to be any repercussions? So what happens when they fail to pay back this money?
I don't think
what
there's an option
then?
of not paying back the money.
Because there's no period that has been given, eh? So it just says the minister needs to pay back 75,000, but over
Okay, so we
what
want to
period
know,
of time?
are we saying you
then
can-
it would have been, a guidance to say, okay, if they don't pay by this time, then the lawyer is going to take its course, and this is
Right.
what they're going to do.
I definitely agree. It would be nice to get the full situation.
Sure.
Say, is there a payment plan available? And what exactly are we expecting to see? A little bit away from this, the point that you've raised, I definitely feel the way that ministers sometimes organize their lives, they do it like they'll never leave office, and there's no beyond these four walls. And so this is why with some, they might not be able to actually pay back this amount, depending on how they set up their affairs and what type of financial plans that they have. And this is not to in reference to any one particular minister, but I think it's also a mindset thing, from whether someone's in a ministerial position or whether someone is in a clerical position but working for the Zambian government. We need to stop being abusive of the Zambian money, the Zambian system, because there's sometimes that negative connotation with what it means to be a civil servant. It's like take, like drum and zaboma. It's for the Zambian people.
Yes.
And
People
so
are paying
when you're
taxes.
not paying the money that you have been asked to pay back, you're stealing from the child in Shangomo who has no school. You are stealing from the mother who has
Development
just
of
died
hospitals,
in
yes,
Winilunga
yeah.
because she wasn't able to deliver her child in a safe hospital. So
True.
it comes down to looking at things that way. I think when we think about it too broadly, we think, oh, okay, this is 4.7 million. This is 4.7 million kwacha that could go to changing a school, changing a district, changing a hospital facility. So I think it's time that we loved our country so much that we stopped stealing from it.
That's true.
And something I still want to just drive this point home. Stealing from the country is not just money. Stealing from the country is going to your job and not being efficient in your job.
Yes.
So
leaving your jacket at the
leaving your
office.
jacket and you go. So why should you get a salary? Why are you drawing a salary if you're not going to be efficient, if you're not going to be effective? And we need to stop just looking to say no corruption or no ministers are stealing. So many of us are stealing from our country in different shapes and forms.
Sure.
Right?
Yes. And I like what you've just brought up. And I think also to marry it, I think we also need to, refer it to being relevant. Like, relevance is not just about, what you can do at that particular time, but how are you also being relevant to yourself also? Because at a certain point, we need to understand that your work will speak for you.
Always.
It's not always about what you have to say. What you say is they're just mere words. But how you work now will speak for you at the end of the day. We always talk about, where we want credible leaders. We want leaders that are going to be accountable as well. How would you expect to be re-elected into office if you are not showing, signs of being, someone that could be trusted by your people as well? And away from this a bit, there was a discussion that I was listening to on radio, and there was a question that was posed to say, would it be better to actually have ministers or councillors that already have money, that are wealthy, or it's okay, we need someone that is like coming from a poor background as well? And there were very interesting, opinions that people were giving.
I can only imagine.
And what. And when you look at things like that, now it begins to open your mind. Is it the money that actually makes you better decisions, or is the lack of it that makes you make better decisions? You know what I mean? So there are those things there.
Well, I think it comes down to principles.
Exactly,
Because
yes.
you can have wealthy people who are crooks. You can have poor people who are crooks. There's no set there's no set economic
Standards.
background
Yeah,
to
yeah.
say that rich people are always 100% honest. Sometimes wealthy people are the most corrupt. Sometimes they are the most shady in their dealings, right? But I definitely get why some people would feel that way, because sometimes I also think, like, would we be different if people had a certain background? Because sometimes there's those things that saying, if you're kumwena kubukulu, and now you don't know, you just want to take,
Yes,
right?
Yeah. Oh, that's a very, very good point as well. Because sometimes I think people get really excited about what they get to have at that particular point. It matters where you are coming from, like how was you are bringing, what values were
What values
instilled
were
into you,
imparted.
what values are you share with with the people
but
around
lack is
you as well.
problematic. It can also now take you to the opposite end, where you
That's the
haven't, then now
problem.
you have abundance and you don't know how to relate to it, and
That's
you
the
think it will
problem.
finish, and so
Yes.
now you want to amass so much, right?
I think when it comes to also nominating of ministers or representatives in whether in constituencies as well, we need to have a platform where there is question and answers that are given, like you put them on on a podium and ask them questions about what plans that they have, where they're coming from, their background, so you can tell from how someone obviously responds and comes out to say, okay, this one could be a good leader, this one cannot really be a good leader before they're elected into office. Because then I think that's the only way we'll be able to like cut down on putting people in office that do not deserve to be there.
But I like that you bring the conversation to sort of have a test of character.
Yes.
This is something that we don't take very seriously though in Zambia, and regardless of the type of scandals someone has, they're still able to get into leadership positions.
Right.
And sometimes the blame also in part is the whole Christian nation narrative, to give chances, to be forgiving, and to people fall and that type of thing. But sometimes we need to call a spade and not be swayed away from a conviction to say, look, maybe this person is not the best person to be in this particular role, because when you look at a personal record of when you look at their personal history, they have time and time again maybe shown that maybe this person is not the best leader because maybe they don't possess great leadership qualities, or they have a few scandals that make you think, are they honest? Are they trustworthy? So we need to raise the standard of the requirement we want in a leader. We can't just say no because they are great or because they have good people relations. We need to take a holistic approach to the type of people we want to have as custodians of our resources.
Exactly. And that just brought a thought in my head. I know where everyone is looking for opportunities. And I'm thinking, yes, opportunities could be there, but opportunities need to be given to someone that puts themselves in the position to actually, receive that opportunity to do what they can do best. Everyone can be given a platform, okay? But are you that person that needs to hold that platform? What is it about you that makes you that right person to actually be in that position? And I just feel like when it comes to certain things, it's okay to say no if you're not going to deliver. No is also an answer. There's some people that say, no, if I say no. As much as you can have something about you, but if your character is not aligned to that, role in itself, it will not work regardless of what you do.
Right, and I think we also need to reach a place as a nation where we see the normalization of people stepping down from office.
Exactly.
Like, okay, I dropped the
That's
ball
very
on this,
respectable, in
and
fact.
out
Yeah.
of principle, on moral grounds, I will say thank you so much for the opportunity, but I'm moving away from this role because of A, B, C, D.
Yes.
And when we normalize that, we show that we have leaders who are accountable to people and have a conscience. Because if you have a conscience, there's no way that you know that you've acted contrary to what was expected of you and still have the confidence to just be business as usual, right?
That's true. So we'll go on a break and we'll come back after this. Welcome back. You are watching News Report with me, SALIFYANJI BWEUPE.
And KAMOTA MAYONDI.
Into our next story, a 19-year-old man of airstrip compound in Mazabuka has been sentenced to 30 months imprisonment with hard labor for wounding another man over a girlfriend. Biatu FM's court journalist reports that this was in a case involving Beliat Zandu, who was appearing before the resident magistrate Peter Mugala in the Mazabuka Magistrate Court on charges of unlawfully wounding. According to court records, on 11th July this year, Zandu stabbed Cholwe Shamukoka with a bottle on his left side of the chest and the left arm on accusations of having an affair with his girlfriend. In mitigation, Zandu asked for leniency from the court as he was a first offender and is also taking care of his sick mother. In delivering judgment, Magistrate Mugala slapped a 30-month imprisonment on the defendant after taking into consideration the plea for leniency. So that's some news coming out of Mazabuka, where a 19-year-old was or has been sentenced to 30 months imprisonment with hard labor for wounding another man, on grounds of, him going out with his girlfriend.
Right.
And obviously these are associated to be crimes of passion in as much as, the stabbed did not, is it Cholwe Shamukoka?
Thankfully.
Yeah, did not, lose his life, but still,
But
this
19 is so young
19
to
is
be involved
so
in
young.
something so gruesome. And from my understanding of it, a bottle on the left side must have been alcohol involved, where now your judgment is impaired, you may be intoxicated and you break a bottle and cause physical harm.
And left side, that is almost at the heart, so anything could have happened, at that particular time. And it's sad that we get to receive these cases every now and then. This is not the first case. This is the first of many cases that we've had to talk about on this show, already. And, it's really sad that apart from him being young, obviously, the fact that it had to take him to actually react in this manner, and the law having to slap him with a sentence because of the decision that he may have made when he was not in his right mind, obviously we assume. But considering the sentencing that was given due to the plea for leniency, do you think this was a fair sentence?
Well, 19 is fairly young.
He's an adult though.
Yes, he is an adult, but he's fairly young. First-time offender, probably has no known history of violence. I think 30 months with hard labor seems about right. But also the way that the Zambian prisons are, I think even 2 months, you don't want to be incarcerated in a Zambian prison. It's extremely crowded, it's extremely tough, and 30 months is a very long time. It's a very long time, in as much as it seems short, but 30 months, that's quite a long time.
That's like 2 years, 6 months,
2.5 years, and then you're now 21 and a half, right?
Yeah.
So that's a lost
and
time.
when you come out,
you're not the
obviously
same
be
person.
discriminated. You're going to face all these, pressure from the environment and whatnot, and it's really quite sad. Yeah.
And we get into international news now. And so Russian cyber spies have been accused of trying to steal research on possible coronavirus vaccine. The United Kingdom, the United States, and Canada say hackers who are part of Russian intelligence service are targeting institutions that are developing a vaccine. The British government says it also has evidence of the interference in last year's election. So the Kremlin has denied all allegations. So we take a look at Al Jazeera, where Charlie Angela has a report on this.
It's a global race to find a vaccine for COVID-19, and one country is accused of trying to cheat. The UK's National Cybersecurity Centre says Russian hackers known as APT-29, the Dukes or Cozy Bear, have tried to infiltrate coronavirus facilities to steal their work. Britain, the US and Canada, whose research into possible vaccines is quickly advancing, have all been targeted.
To be targeting with cyber attacks the international effort, not just here in the UK but in Canada, in the US, to try and find a vaccine which is for the greater good of the world as well as our people here at home. And I think it's absolutely right that we call it out in this measured way with our international partners.
The hackers are believed to operate as part of the Russian intelligence service, allegations that Russia strongly denies. The UK government says the hackers are using phishing and malware in their attacks, and they've supplied coding instructions so organisations can protect themselves. This latest attack comes as the UK reveals Russian hackers also interfered in the country's general election last year by trying to spread and amplify leaked documents online.
Ведется уголовное расследование, сообщил РАП.
A criminal investigation is going on, but at this stage it would be inappropriate for us to say something Britain has said. The statement is so vague and controversial that it's almost impossible to understand. If it's inappropriate to say it, then do not say it. If you do, then illustrate the facts.
There's also evidence of meddling in the 2016 Brexit vote and the election that followed a year later. The government says it will finally release the report with details next week. 4 high-level attacks in 4 years, but security experts say they're not surprised.
What has changed is that Vladimir Putin, starting about 2013, changed his policy and ordered the intelligence services to engage in a more systematic, aggressive series of actions to destabilize elections and to disrupt Russia's rivals, which is the European Union, NATO, the United Kingdom, France, the United States.
They also say that vaccine development is a priority target for intelligence agencies, and Russia wouldn't be the only state involved. Charlie Angela, Al Jazeera.
And that was Al Jazeera with a report from the UK, the US and Canada accusing Russia of hacking vaccine trials. And on that note, we come to the end of the news report and we take a look at the stories that we led with this morning. COVID-19 deaths reach 108. Yunza assembles team to find COVID-19 cure. Local investors key, says Yaluma.
And Mazabuka youth who stabbed man over girlfriend sentenced to 30 months imprisonment. UK, US, Canada accuse Russia of hacking virus vaccine trials.
I'm KAMOTA Mayondi.
And this has been SALIFYANJI saying, have a lovely day and enjoy your Saturday.
Did
Goodbye.
you almost say good night?
I did.
Have a lovely Saturday. See you on Monday.